Good evening, and welcome to another night of Ts&Zzz, a podcast to help you get a better night's sleep. I am one of your hosts, Scott Elchison. Doug, hello, my co-host. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Another fine evening talking about terms of service with you, Scott.
Doug, you know, there's nothing I like more than hanging out with you behind the mic and lulling our listeners to sleep by talking about terms of service agreements. And if you're new to the show, let me just give you a quick breakdown of what Ts&Zzz is. It's very straightforward. Basically, this is a podcast to help you fall asleep at night. We're really leaning into dialogue, this conversation between myself and Doug, as a metronome for your mind. It's a show that you can turn on as you start to wind down, and then slowly drift off to sleep, knowing full well that as we're going back and forth and having a conversation, you're not missing out on anything important. That is because we're talking about the most boring documents on the internet, which are terms of service agreements. It's those things that you agree to without ever reading because they're way too long and way too boring. So we're trying to put those to good use by establishing some really nice conversation and dialogue to help you fall asleep at night. I mean, Doug, again, have you found this to be effective? Are you falling asleep when we're talking?
I occasionally get a little glassy-eyed when reading some sections, and I do always sleep a little bit better after recording one of these episodes.
Kind of helps you de-stress, gives you something to really, attach your mind to, and that's just the whole idea of this dialogue as the metronome for your mind. So welcome to the show. We're gonna dive right into tonight's episode, all about Snap Inc.'s terms of service. This is specifically for if you live in the United States. They were last updated on October 30th, 2019, and these terms of service do include an arbitration agreement. Well, Doug, do you want to kick off tonight's terms of service with the welcome section? Everybody, welcome to Snap Inc.'s terms of service.
Happy to. Welcome! ! We've drafted these terms of service, which we call the terms, so you'll know the rules that govern our relationship with you. Although we have tried our best to strip the legalese from the terms, there are places where these terms may read like a traditional contract. There's a good reason for that. These terms do indeed form a legally binding contract between you and Snap Inc. So please read them carefully. I do like how that section talked to me on my level.
So do I. Now, I guess we'll be the judge of how much legalese is stripped out of here. But hey, they're trying. That's a plus. There's only been a couple other companies that have actually done a good job with that. Unsplashed and actually Substack and Imager are very good terms of service. Very, very consumer friendly.
Oh, nice. I think it's also important to call out, this section does go on to say that by using their products, Snapchat, Bitmoji, or any of their other products, that those terms do apply. So we immediately jump right back into legalese. I'm like, we don't do that. But also, here's this and a section about that arbitration notice that comes up later on.
Yeah, and the arbitration notice is in all caps. And I we got to figure out why that is, because every arbitration agreement and notice is always in all caps. I don't know if that's for clarity, for whatever reasons, but it's always in all caps. I don't know. If there's a lawyer listening, somebody let us know why it's written in all caps, but it always is.
I would imagine it's just why risk not putting it in all caps? Make it as visible as possible so people know up front. Because I'm guessing there's also a reason why they explicitly call it out every time. It's like, this happens. Well, it's kind of, you waive your right to a trial? Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah, right by trial.
I've read three of these.
Trial by jury. Yeah.
Trial by, oh man.
Yeah. Yeah, so, something to be aware of. Some people consider that a big deal. Others may not. You let us know. But all right, well, let's just dive into the sections here. So Snapchat does grant you some rights. First and foremost, they grant you, basically, it's a personal, worldwide, royalty-free, non-assignable, non-exclusive, revocable, and non-sublicensable license to access and use their service. So basically, the sole purpose of this license is for letting the consumer use and enjoy the services benefits in a way that agrees with their terms and their usage policies as per their community guidelines. Standard operating procedure. You'll notice a lot of times with services, especially software services, you're always granted a license. You never really own anything. Doug, and I think we've talked about this before, so everything's kind of licensed to you, free or not, you don't really own anything.
Yeah. Well, this is that digital world.
Yeah.
Hard to own.
For example, like Bitmojis. Did you know that they're owned exclusively by Snap Inc.?
That I did know. I put it together when like they were only really available on like a keyboard and Snapchat. And then I was like, pretty much it.
Yeah, but the thing is, it's your likeness.
They own
the avatar.
They do own the avatar.
It says all Bitmoji avatars are owned exclusively by Snap Inc., and they reserve the right to use any Bitmoji avatars for any purpose, including promoting their products and services. So something to think about when you make a Bitmoji is you don't own it, and Snapchat has the right to use it for promotion without your permission, because they can. It'd be nice if they asked, though, right? Especially if you build it out after yourself.
I mean, it would be nice if they asked. This is a strange statement. I did not realize that prior to reading these terms of service.
2 sections in and we're already stumped.
I'm like, wow. I mean, I guess I'm not super surprised to hear it. And I really doubt they're going to pick my Bitmoji out of everybody that's available. Just sunglasses and a shirt, like not too much going on there. But it makes sense. It's just always a surprise to see that you don't really get a say in terms of what like you're making content on their platform.
Yeah,
and they have the right to it.
That's a good way to look at it. Though I'm sure. I mean, they might define what's content, and is it really you? Anyways. Now we're getting into very deep, theory.
Philosophical questions here. Is anything really you? I mean, who knows? I don't even know if I'm myself someday, Scott. It's hard to say.
Hey, man, I can tell you sometimes you're not, all right? Sometimes you're very far from it. Well, Section 3, let's just dive into this one. So these are rights that you grant Snapchat.
I do want to say this right off the bat, because I had to go and count how many paragraphs this was compared to the section you just read of rights we grant you. There's 4 paragraphs for the rights they grant you, and one of them basically says that you don't have a right to the thing you own. And there's like 9 to 10 paragraphs under the rights that we grant Snapchat when we use their service, or Snap Inc. when we use their services. So I'm not saying that it's an unfair relationship, but you're definitely probably not getting the best deal right off the bat in terms of who's getting what.
Yeah, and I have to imagine this section is going to deal all about content, and basically any content that you make on their platform, you're going to be granting them a license of access or something.
Let's find out.
Yeah, very first paragraph here, it says, many of our services let you create, upload, post, send, receive, and store content. When you do that, you retain whatever ownership rights in that content you had to begin with, but you grant Snapchat a license to use that content. How broad that license depends on which services you use and the settings you have selected. Well, this is just going to be complicated, and I can see why there's so many more paragraphs in this section versus the other one.
In my mind, what I perk up a lot about on that section is that they say store content. And I feel like a lot of what people think about Snapchat is ethereal.
Ephemeral.
Yeah, but it goes away. It goes away from other people's phones, maybe.
And your phone. And if you have memory selected and whatnot.
That is true.
I'm sure we're going to find in here a policy or something on how long they keep the Snapchat that you think disappeared on their internal servers for X amount of time. I'm putting money on this one. Let's go into this next paragraph here. This relates to their story submissions. So when you have your story submissions and they're set to viewable by everyone, as well as content that you submit to their crowdsourced services, including the R story. So that's kind of like the New York City story. That is now public content. So for all the content that is submitted to the services other than public content, you're granting Snapchat essentially a worldwide license. This license for the limited purpose of operating, developing, providing, promoting, and improving the services and researching and developing new ones. So they're taking your content, they're using your content because it's in the public domain. It's been labeled as a public domain, and they're going to use it to improve the service as well as some other things. So good to know. A lot of it, again, makes sense. A lot of standard practices because we do want the service to be better, right? If we use it.
That is the theory behind it. And I hope it's all used within the guidelines of making the service better.
Yeah. Well, Doug, this beefy paragraph number 3 here, talks about public content.
I was really looking to take a bite out of this beefy paragraph.
All right, well, take a chunk out of it.
Because public content is inherently public and chronicles matters of public interest, the license you grant us for this content is broader. For public content, you grant Snap Inc., our affiliates, and our business partners all the same rights you grant for non-public content in the previous paragraph, as well as a perpetual license to create derivative works from promote, exhibit, broadcast, syndicate, publicly perform, and publicly display public content in any form and in any and all media or distribution methods, now known or later developed, to the extent it's necessary when you appear in, create, upload, post, or send public content. You also grant Snap Inc., our affiliates, and our business partners the unrestricted worldwide perpetual right and license to use your name, likeness, and voice, including in connection with commercial or sponsored content. This means, among other things, that you will not be entitled to any compensation from Snapchat Inc. or affiliates or our business partners if your name, likeness, or voice is conveyed through the services either on Snapchat application or on one of our business partners' platforms.
Take a breath there, Doug.
That is a beefy paragraph. And
that's why nobody reads these things. And this is the definition of legalese. But again, you can see why it's there from the business perspective, but from a consumer perspective, it's like, what does all that even mean? And why? Right? Like, it's complex.
What I learned is if they wanted to take a cool submission that was submitted to your point, like the New York City story,
yep,
about brunch and how, brunch happens on Snapchat.
Yep.
And they want to turn that into an ad and they want to syndicate that through wherever they want to syndicate through, they can and they will.
And they'll pay you for it.
Yeah. Not a dime.
So, something everybody should know about. Pros and cons. So what else we got in here?
Well, there's a much shorter paragraph right after this, which I'm kind of intrigued about.
What, the one-liner or the one below that?
The one right below the one-liner.
Yeah.
And it's not nearly as fun as like a comedian's one-liner.
Yeah. Well, so this one's interesting. So this is just about Snapchat saying that they have the ability and the right to access, review, screen, and delete your content at any time for any reason. So again, they're kind of like the sole proprietor of the platform. And if anything that is essentially developed on their platform, they can remove it for any reason at any time, no reason or for a reason. Though the interesting point here is that a person themselves, like you alone, remain responsible for the content you create, upload, post, send, or store on the service. So Snapchat, again, is taking no responsibility of what's posted on their website or the service, but can do some sort of moderation if they so deem necessary. Shout out Section 230.
I love a good section shout out. I feel like I'm at a football game.
This is a different section.
It's a different type of section. I'll be honest, I don't even know if they do that at football games.
The fun ones they do.
And the fun ones they do. So I do want to touch on another paragraph that's in here that states, should you develop or be deemed to have any rights in a Bitmoji avatar not granted by these terms, you agree to irrevocably and unconditionally assign to Snapchat Inc. all of your additional right, title, and interest, including all copyrights in and to such Bitmoji avatar.
They're really protecting the Bitmoji avatars.
Maybe I got a bit of a tinfoil hat on here on this one.
Well, hey, let's go down a path, Doug. Let's see where it takes us.
But is that basically saying, like, if I have a Bitmoji,
yeah,
and my side career that's currently not taking off of singer, songwriter, pop star, were to all of a sudden take off overnight, that they would still have the rights to my Bitmoji.
Yes, but like, what would your singer songwriter career have to do with your Bitmoji?
Well, I mean, I don't know. Maybe I wanted to advertise using my Bitmoji. I couldn't.
Yeah, you couldn't. Without their permission.
Yeah, you would have to ask. Like, you couldn't use your Bitmoji if you wanted to make. Let's not talk about. All right, maybe my non-existent career as a singer-songwriter wasn't great, but now let's say I have a non-existent career as a YouTuber, content creator on YouTube, and I created thumbnails, and I wanted to use my Bitmoji as like the mascot for my channel. Don't think I could here because I'd be violating copyright. on Snap Inc.
Yeah. You have to get their permission to do that. But yeah, you would probably get like a cease and desist order if you were big. That's kind of like the thing. You probably use it until you got big, but yeah. Which is interesting. And this is something to note actually, because there are other avatar companies in the space where the talent themselves, so if you're a celebrity, kind of more or less owns their likeness within that environment. So it kind of depends on like your business model, but obviously Snapchat's like, no, this is just the thing we own. It's fun for messaging. But there are other companies where the core avatar is kind of like their main product. And if your main product is then like monetizing a celebrity's likeness, they're going to own that likeness in a way, right? So it just kind of depends on how everything's set up and what the business model is. So
I'm fascinated. I'm fascinated how much you've learned about companies by reading their terms of services across the line.
You can really learn a lot. It's really impressive. I know. Or not even impressive. It's just interesting. But I think there's a limit, and we might tap this limit in the next 4 episodes of, because after a while you'll see like they're all pretty similar. Just some are longer than others for whatever reason, but a lot of them are pretty similar. The next section here is called Section 4, Content of Others. That is just basically like a copyright saying that, one, Snapchat doesn't take responsibility for any content that others post to the service. But then two, well, there actually is no two. I was thinking something else. This is them saying Snapchat doesn't take responsibility for content of others, no matter what form it comes in across their platform. And then they reference their community guidelines to make it very clear that they do not want the service to be put to bad uses. So, and just note, that's just one extra document within this terms of service that you have to read.
You're right. And directly below that is the privacy section where they say, your privacy matters to us. You can learn how we handle your information when you use our services by reading our privacy policy, which is then a second document that you would need to read, which I would imagine is also of comparative length to this current document.
They usually are. Yeah, they usually are. Section 6. Well, within Section 6, there are 2 more documents that are linked out. So now we're at a total of 4 extra documents that you agree to when you accept these terms of service. But Section 6 is a great one. It's all about respecting people's rights on Snapchat's platform. So basically, this whole section just says, Snap Inc. respects the rights of others, and so should you. You therefore may not use the services or enable anyone else to use the service in any of the below manner. So that comes down to, infringing on privacy or copyright or trademark, intellectual property rights, defamation, spam or soliciting users, bullies, harassment, or intimidations. You're also agreeing to respect Snapchat's and Snap Inc.'s brand guidelines and Bitmoji brand guidelines. So this goes back to your point, Doug, about using the Bitmoji or some sort of Snapchat branding for your non-existent YouTube career. You have to kind of respect their guidelines, and if you can and cannot do that. And this is actually kind of nice. This is something new. It says at the very bottom of this section, respecting other people's rights, it says, in short, you may not use the services or the content on the services in any ways that are not authorized by these terms, nor may you help anyone else in doing so. Which isn't as in short as I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be a bit more detailed.
Yeah.
I'm kind of disappointed. I was hoping for more on that one.
Well, they're trying to strike a balance here between legalese and non-legalese, and they haven't quite hit the flow yet. It's mainly been legalese.
Yes, it has been.
With maybe occasionally a trendy intro into the section.
It's all about the setup, right? The party starts with the invitation. Maybe if they can get you to, if they think that they can get you to think that these terms of services aren't that full of legalese, then maybe you'll think that they aren't, when in actuality they are. Put the tinfoil back on for that statement. At some point, we should probably take the tinfoil hats off.
I don't know. The more I read these, the more I'm like, man, there's some the implication of these things is like, it's nuts.
It's also complicated. I'm gonna keep saying that, but it's definitely also complicated.
Yeah, and I feel like the reality, like as much fun as it is to crack jokes, the reality behind it is not that much interesting stuff is happening like on a day-to-day basis with like the term of service or like you're the anything that goes on in the privacy policy in the back end. Like it becomes very aggregated across the board, I would imagine.
What do you mean by aggregated?
You become one of, I don't know what their user base is, but like tens of millions, we'll say. And then it quickly becomes less about you as an individual as much as this agreement is between you and them. I would imagine you're just one data point in their like a segment or something. Like it becomes like
this whole thing isn't for the consumer; it's for the company.
Yeah, it's probably not really them trying to take something away from you it is like just being like, we're going to protect ourselves,
right? Because from their perspective, it's like one versus their user base is like, I think it's close to 100 million. No, I think it's more than that. You want to here? I'll Google it real quick.
I'm trying to think where they rank in terms of top platforms.
Here we go, Doug. As of Q4 2020, there are 265 million daily active Snapchat users worldwide. So a bit off from that tens of millions you quoted.
Well, I didn't start this podcast saying I was an expert on Snapchat's performance, just so I can read their terms of service.
It says here, with an estimated 46 million monthly active users in the United States. So,
okay, that's not terrible. I mean, I feel like, what was it like almost, that was like over a third of the U.S.
Yeah, well, the U.S. has 325 million people is like the number we use as an estimate. They're very competitive.
I feel like nobody talks about Snapchat anymore. Like I know when I think of social media platforms, I don't feel like people bring them up very much as a social media platform. It's like, oh, are you on Snapchat? I feel like it's like either implied
Doug,
you have it.
The issue is we're starting to phase into an older stage of our lives where some of that conversation we're now being like removed from because we've defined our social media intake. Well, maybe not, because we all hopped on TikTok pretty quickly.
Well, actually, I don't have a TikTok.
Well, maybe not then. Maybe I just have it because of my job.
Well, what I've learned is if I just go on Instagram, I'm basically on TikTok.
Oh, Doug.
I feel like I'm not old enough to be having this type of moment where I'm clearly so out of touch in terms of a social media trend. This is where I'm at right now. So it is what it is.
That is a grandpa statement right there.
Well, half the content on Instagram is just reposted TikToks. Like I don't feel like I'm far off by saying that statement.
Instagram Reels is a TikTok competitor.
Is that what that is? Oh, I find that layout to be atrocious.
You don't like the vertical video? Or specifically the Reels layout?
Okay. I've had a long-standing dislike of all things vertical in terms of if you're taking photos or filming.
Okay, interesting. So you're a traditionalist.
Well, yeah, I took like one photo class in middle school and another in college, and I have built up this opinion, which is not very solidly based. I was like, dude, horizontal so you can frame it a little bit better.
But Doug, if the frame is your phone, it's got to be vertical.
You can just turn it 90 degrees and make it horizontal. So yeah, I don't like the vertical format. I also, though, don't love the chaotic scroll of dozens of different videos. And I feel like, I've legitimately never used TikTok. I don't know if you have to select one and then it appears full screen, you continue to scroll, or if
it's always full screen and all you do is scroll up and a new video loads every time you scroll up.
And let me guess, there's an algorithm to recommend.
Yes, Doug. Yes, there is. But you know what's special about that algorithm? It recommends it based off of your interests versus who you follow. So the other social media like Twitter and Facebook and Instagram was always based off like a follower graph and a social graph. Like who do you follow and will surface content that way. TikTok was changing the game because their algorithm surfaced content that you liked. And so you'll get content that's been liked or viewed millions of times and other times viewed hundreds of times because the content is more relevant to you. So like they'll serve you the best content versus other social platforms that were serving you content by people that you follow. And that's the key to TikTok's algorithm.
Fundamentally, that sounds like a better algorithm because like when Facebook first started, you friended everybody. Everybody's your friend. You didn't have a ton of shared interests with those people. That's one of the reasons why I'm not on Facebook anymore. I didn't really want to see what everybody was doing anymore. I'm like, you guys aren't reading the books I'm reading, playing the games I'm playing, doing the things I'm doing. So that's what TikTok does. That's great. It just feels like Vine.
Yes. everybody has been making fun of TikTok because Vine, we had this in 2007 with Vine. Or no, not 2007, 2010?
2013. Yes, was like I think the peak Vine craze.
Yeah, because Twitter came out in 2006 or 2007, so it was definitely not then. But then Twitter bought it, and they did nothing with it, and it died on the Vine.
The grapes of wrath all over again.
Yeah, right?
Well, we've really taken a turn from the terms of service for me to unpack my feelings about...
Do you think there's strong opinions you want to share on algorithmic news feeds?
Well, no, not really. I'm considering dropping Instagram too, just because I feel like I haven't posted it.
But we got a lot of good meme chats.
Oh, that's the one thing. The one thing that's holding me on is the Lord of the Rings memes, and then
they're tasty. They're so tasty.
They're great memes. And then I have a few of my friends out here in Greenville also send me memes and stuff like that. And so I look at those. I just feel like I'm not like, what am I holding on to? The occasional great meme, yeah, that's fantastic. And I guess occasionally I do like to see what my friends are doing, like from college and stuff like that. But I feel like I'm not a consistent checker for like what's going on. I think, you know what? Finsta. You remember those? Remember those. They might still be a thing.
No? Question mark?
A Finsta is a fake, or it was like a shortening of like a fake Instagram or something like that. But basically, the concept is you'd have one Instagram account that would be followed by, hundreds of people that you were friends with throughout like high school, college, work, whatever. And that's where you post all of like the... really staged photos.
I'm living my best life.
Yeah, here's me on vacation, and all I ever post is pictures on vacation, so you always think I'm on vacation, and you don't see that I'm actually a stressed human being.
Right.
And the Finsta would be followed by like 12 people, and it'd be a private account, and that's where you post like your pictures from the bars the night before, like doing crazy stuff, posting videos of you like jumping over fences. Like, that was like the other thing. Like it was like this was a thing that I learned about like towards the end of college, is that everybody had these like other Instagram accounts that were just like 9 people could follow them, and that was it.
That's kind of cool. I never had a Finsta, nor did I know that was the thing. But I do know content creators have multiple accounts so that way they can test different formats and posts first to see how it performs before they post at their main account. So kind of something similar.
It is something similar. This is my deep social media rant.
Speaking of that, and speaking of memories and social media platforms, let's just jump to section 10 here on memories, which I think is a very interesting feature within the Snapchat platform. So for those that don't know, memories is their data storage service that makes it easier for you to reminisce anytime, anywhere. So by agreeing to these terms, you automatically enable memories. And once memories are enabled, it will remain enabled as long as you maintain your Snapchat account. But you can turn it off if you want to. So this is the feature that'll pop up once in a while and say, hey, remember this fun time you had having a Miller Lite at the Globe in New York City on October 3rd, 2017? That's this feature. There's a whole section on it. So, let's see what's going on down here. So I think this is kind of interesting. It says there's a clause in here that says, you may not resell any memories features. So this means you cannot do something like use memories to operate your own file storage or distribution service for other people. I don't really get that one.
I'm trying to think of what the use case would be.
How would I get other people's memories? This means you can't do something like use memories to operate your own file storage or distribution service for other people. Oh, I see what it's saying. It's basically, so if I wanted to set up like my own Google Cloud Drive and curate people's memories or features, or use like an API plugin to copy this feature in any way, shape, or form.
That makes more sense than my tinfoil hat that fell into the gutter for a second. I don't think it's a crazy thing to make a statement about in terms of Snapchat.
No, well, so it says, under safe, there's a whole section on the community guidelines that obviously is going to not allow that type of content. But there's safety section here, right? Let's say the setting is saying, you will not post content that contains or links to pornographic, graphic violence, threats, hate speech, incites violence, or anything like that. So there you go. It's right in the safety section. Can't do it.
They know what people use their platform for.
Doug, I think you'll find that a lot of platforms run into that issue.
It's common. It's a common thread across the entire internet.
Mm-hmm. Indeed. So what else is interesting about memories? Well, there's something interesting about like kind of like the passcode management here. It says there's an option for the memories feature to create a restricted area by setting a passcode, which could be a PIN or a passphrase or some other mechanism. Basically, it's a way to secure your memories in case somebody else gets a hold of your device. But there's a pretty big warning here, and I like that they put this in all capitals when it comes to this more restricted area and the passcode around it. It says, if you lose or forget your memory's passcode, or if you enter the wrong one too many times, you will lose access to any content you saved in the restricted area of memories. And they do not offer any passcode recovery features for this area. So you are solely responsible for remembering your password if you put your content in the restricted area. Reminds me completely of like owning like a crypto wallet. It's like you were responsible for your recovery phase, and if you lose that, or if you don't have like your key, forget about it. You're never getting that wallet back.
I'm curious why they chose such a secure method for the memories.
Personal content data breaches, there's an added layer of security. Sensitive photos.
It's just an intense one. Like my bank account allows me to reset my password.
There's a whole conversation around like user responsibility, right? Like where does that end and where does it begin? And this is one of those areas where Snapchat is obviously saying you're responsible for this specific portion. Because like you can sort of like remember and get password recovered to like your overall Snapchat account, but like this vault that's inside your Snapchat account, you can lose access to it.
Which I suppose if you are trying to manage personal content that people are going to be creating and putting on here, probably users draw some lines. It was like, we don't want to get involved.
So what else we got going on here, Doug? Oh, we skipped over section 9, which is titled Your Account.
Section 9, Your Account. You are responsible for any activity that occurs in your Snapchat account, so it's important that you keep your account secure. One way to do that is to select a strong password that you don't use for any other account. By using the services, you agree that in addition to exercising common sense, you will not create more than one account for yourself. You will not create another account if you've already disabled your account unless you have our written permission to do so. You will not buy, sell, rent, or lease access to your Snapchat account, snaps, a Snapchat username, or a friend link without our written permission. You will not share your password. You will not log in or attempt to access the services through unauthorized third-party applications or clients.
I kind of got a kick out of
though don't use for any other account.
Yeah. Don't use a password that you've used on any other account. Oh man, that is such a crazy security flaw. Because most individuals have a couple accounts, if not all their accounts, across the same password. And if 1Password was going to sponsor this podcast, now would be the time, because with 1Password, you can have multiple different passwords all organized by 1Password. 1Pass. Use promo code Ts&Zzz.
Not to lampoon our sponsorship deal here, Scott. But I do have a question. Is that not just like the keychain on Google Chrome or Apple or anything like that, where like you have your passwords managed? I'm guessing they have a cooler UI, but
it's a password manager. That's correct.
Okay.
I don't know if 1Pass is more secure than, let's say, Keychain is on, internal like iOS devices. I'm not sure. I'm not a security expert.
You want a really random opinion of mine about username, passwords, and all that?
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm curious to see where the world goes in terms of all that. In terms of like, do you think it will be continued? Like you have to have a password manager to manage all of your username and passwords, or do you think that currently, like you'll see across a lot of websites, you can log in with your Gmail account. You can log in with, like, there's an integration just to pull from an existing identity provider.
That's a great question. I had this thought today because as of the date we're recording, Google I/O happened this afternoon, and they essentially announced a solution for that, where it's like sign in with Google is getting even more robust, where it starts to fill in all your account passwords, but then it saves all your account passwords and puts like cryptography across them. So basically it's going to go two ways. One, people are going to migrate towards it's like, I'm going to remember everything myself, or it's going to go straight to now Google or Apple or whoever, like my core OS provider is going to make all my passwords for me. And I only need to log in with my face or my fingerprint across any device, any application, any service.
This is going to be my could have been rich story.
All right. Let's hear it.
3 years ago, I had this exact thought. I was like, what, like, how cool? And of course I called it, like, it would be like, the product called like skeleton key or something like that. But it's like, you have one account that accesses every service that you're providing. Now this makes more sense to me in terms of one account, or like one operating system that manages and controls your passwords in a more systematic sense, instead of it being a third party that like starts up. If you or I were to say, let's build this product, we would have to break into the industry.
Right. Well, the product's one pass or one password.
Yeah. And so they're trying to break in.
No, one password's been around for a while. They have a lot of market share. Anyways, semantics, go on.
Semantics. Yes, they are a well-established company that are doing quite well for themselves.
And they might be a sponsor, Doug. They might be a sponsor. So don't shit on them.
But I do think that it makes sense for Google and for Apple and even Microsoft. These people that have Firefox, like these people that have these well-maintained and used browsers, to also step into that realm, which they've already done with this. But like now it's your OS, like Apple, to your point, like you can just use your fingerprint to sign into any account, because they have integrations across like all these different providers, or people that set up could integrate with them. That would be a very strong position for those companies.
Ecosystem lock-in.
Is that what it's called?
Well, in the sense that it's a feature that like locks you into a certain operating system or provider because of the value it gives you. Like, for example, if Apple or Google has your master password data set that you then put into all of your places that you sign into, you will never know what those passwords are. You can find them out, but you'll never memorize a string of 16 digits. And so that's just one more thing where if you wanted to like leave an ecosystem, it's like I could do that, but then all 56 of my passwords have to be rechanged or updated, or I have to go back and reset all of those. Like, forget about it. It's like thinking about how much effort that would be. It's like, nope, not going to do it. Some people will.
Some people will, but I'm curious with that, like what the breaking point will be for those people when they're like, nope, I'm out. I can't do this anymore. I'm willing to reset. I hate when I have to reset any password. If I had to go back and be like, I have to reset 50, would not be a fun day for me.
Yeah, nah, thank you. Hard pass.
Just sitting in a laptop all day, just drinking coffee, resetting passwords, trying to remember what accounts I even have.
Yeah, if they remember all the accounts you even have, right? And then you kind of figure one out. Anyways. So yeah, password management. It's a real thing. I guess we should go into section 11 here, data charges and mobile phones. So as a user of any of Snapchat products, you are responsible for any mobile phone charges that you may incur while using their services, including text messaging and data charges. If you're unsure what those charges may be, you should ask your service provider before using the service. Standard, straightforward. You got to pay your phone bill in order to use data to access these services when you're on a cellular data connection.
I know this is all cookie cutter. I know that I think very hard to be like, oh, we should put this in there so people are aware of it. But I still like to. I'm still curious if there was like a person who's like, this was like pretty much written after. It's like, hey, we came out with this like first ever mobile application that work on phones, and then somebody like went over their data limit, and then like complained to the company like, oh, we're putting this in there forever. There's always these stories, and you hear them you're like, ooh, this is a lessons learned story.
Yeah, I'm sure somewhere along the way, back probably in the early days of like the iPhone, people are like, why am I paying $300, $3,000 for like a cell phone bill?
Because you're Shazam and everything.
You've Shazammed the same song 5 times in a week. Oh, goodness. Yeah, so 17 is the arbitration agreement. Class action waiver, jury waiver. Yep, that all makes sense. So again, arbitration agreement means that you waive your right to a trial by jury. Also in this section, it just mentions that you waive your right to participate in any sort of class action lawsuit. So you can't, if you're going to sue Snapchat, you can only do so on an individual basis, not as like a group of people saying, hey, we're all going to sue you because we were all affected in the same way. It has to be done under an individual basis. Though I don't know how much that actually holds up in court. Again, I'm not a lawyer. This is not legal advice. But it does seem like while these agreements are in the documents, class action still happens. So who's to say?
Who is to say? And Scott, I have a question for you.
Yep.
As you are the veteran here, they have a section called opt out in terms of, and so I'll read it through, but I'm curious how frequently you see this in other agreements.
Where's the opt out section?
Oh, it's a part of the arbitration agreement.
Oh, part of the arbitration agreement. Yes. It's usually you have like 30 to 60 days to opt out of arbitration.
Yeah. Well,
but it's like a whole thing.
Oh, well, let me read this whole thing. Opt out. You may opt out of this arbitration agreement. If you do so, neither you nor Snapchat can force the other to arbitrate. To opt out, you must notify Snap Inc. in writing no later than 30 days after becoming subject to this arbitration agreement. Your notice must include your name, address, and your Snapchat username and the email address used to set up your Snapchat account if you have one, and an unequivocal statement that you want to opt out of this arbitration agreement. You must either mail your opt-out notice to this address, Snap Inc. There's an address. You can mail it there if you would like, or email the opt-out notice to arbitration-opt-out@snapinc.com. I didn't realize you could opt out of these, but it basically says, all right, you can opt out. Still doesn't mean we're going to arbitrate, though.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure. Like, yes, there isn't like an opt-out that's usually involved in all these agreements, and it is usually like 30 to 60 days after you sign up, which can literally mean the first time like you go to Snapchat's website, because that's one of their services, and so that like accounts for you agreeing to the terms of service.
I am also not a lawyer and can see that viewpoint in terms of, yes, a website is a service. I don't know. This is a boggling statement of the idea of, I guess you are using a service by using their website, so you agree to the terms of service. I get that. But at the same time, I'm like, man, are you really, but I guess, yeah, you're bound to it. And it's not explicitly, you're not explicitly bound to it upon account creation. It's like, hey, you're using our services. These are the terms.
Yeah. I think it can just be the website. Like, it doesn't need to be a full like account sign up, like you said, is my understanding. Again, not a lawyer.
Also not a lawyer. Barely even qualified to be on this podcast.
The only qualification for this podcast is to have read at least one terms of service. And Doug, you're at 3 now, I think. So,
and 3 episodes in, so technically I came in underqualified.
Well, Doug, sometimes you have to apply to the job because the experiences, they're only looking for half of what they're looking for.
Exactly.
Well, that might wrap up this week's episode. I mean, Doug, is there anything else in here that you're interested in covering? They have a severability agreement, section 20, which is basically means if anything within this terms of service is found to be unenforceable, all other provisions stay in effect other than the one that's non-enforceable. So like essentially one provision doesn't negate or render null and void the entire terms of service. It's again pretty standard. They do say that there are additional terms for some specific services, so go find those basically. There are no links, but they might be out there. And hey, Doug, they do welcome comments, questions, concerns, or suggestions. You can contact Snap Inc. by visiting https://support.snapchat.com.
How very kind of them.
Oh, where is the venue for the arbitration? Did it say? Did we read that?
We did not, but I think it would be section 18, exclusive venue.
That's a good point.
I can read that section if you would like.
Nah, let's not read the whole thing. Like, where's the where does it say? It says, will be litigated exclusively in the United States District Court of the Central District of California. So there you go. If you're gonna go sue Snapchat, go to Cali, baby.
I mean, it's a nice reason to get out.
People are willing to travel for anything. Well, Doug, any of the last thoughts on these terms of service? These are actually pretty straightforward. A lot of legalese, obviously, in the second half, as is per usual with the terms of service. All kind of like the consumer focused information is in the front half.
My only closing thoughts would be that this was a particularly long service agreement or terms of service. I hope it made everybody sleep well tonight. And if you're interested in learning more about it, there are sections in here that we didn't cover. but do still pertain to you if you're a user of Snapchat.
So you can definitely go check it out. I hope everybody's drifted off to sleep, and we'll see you all next week.